The blizzard descended upon the mountains like judgment itself, swift and merciless. I stood at the single window of my isolated cabin, watching the world disappear behind curtains of white. The wind screamed through the pine trees with a voice that sounded almost human, almost aware. Each gust hit the cabin walls like fists demanding entry, making the ancient timber groan in protest. My name is Derek, and this was my 4th winter alone at the forgotten edge of the Silvercrest Pack's territory. 4 years since I had been deemed too defective to live among my own kind. 4 years of surviving in this one-room shelter that the Pack elders called mercy, but felt more like slow execution. The cold had already penetrated deep into the cabin despite the fire I had been nursing since dawn. Ice crystals bloomed across the inside of the windows like frozen flowers, beautiful and deadly. I pressed my palm against the glass, feeling the burn of cold even through the barrier. My breath came out in visible clouds, each exhale a small ghost that faded into nothing. I was born wrong, that's what they told me. Too sensitive to the overwhelming presence of alphas, too fragile for the rigid hierarchy that governed pack life. While other Omegas learned to navigate the currents of dominance and submission, I drowned in them. The weight of an alpha's attention felt like being crushed beneath stones. Their commands didn't just compel me, they shattered something essential inside me each time. The pack physician, old Dr. Westmore, had called it hierarchical hypersensitivity. The pack enforcers had simpler words: weak, broken, useless. After my 3rd collapse during a mandatory pack gathering when Alpha Undus himself had addressed the assembled wolves, the council made their decision. I would be given this cabin, provided with basic supplies, and essentially forgotten. Out of sight, out of mind, out of the way. The cabin itself was older than anyone could remember. Built as a hunting lodge decades ago, it had fallen into disrepair until they dragged me here with a single wagon of supplies and a warning to stay out of pack business. One room, perhaps 15 feet square, a wood-burning stove that leaked smoke, a bed that was more board than mattress, shelves for the few possessions I'd been allowed to keep, walls so thin I could hear mice in the insulation and owls in the rafters. Every 2 weeks, a junior pack member would make the 3-mile trek from the main compound to leave supplies at my door. They never knocked, they never waited to see if I was alive. They simply left a crate of food basic staples, nothing fresh, and a stack of firewood that was never quite enough. I supplemented by foraging in the warmer months and rationing carefully through winter. I pulled my sweater tighter, a threadbare thing I'd worn so many years the original color was lost to memory. Beneath it, I wore 2 more layers, and still the cold found ways to reach my skin. I returned to the stove and added another precious log, watching the flames sputter and catch. I tried not to think about how few logs remained in the shed outside, tried not to calculate the days until the next supply drop, tried not to wonder if they'd even come in weather this severe. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just another trick of the wind. The storm had been playing with my senses all day, creating phantom sounds that dissolved when I tried to focus on them. But this was different. This was a sound that cut through the chaos, a whimper, thin and desperate, almost human in its anguish. I froze, every muscle locked as I strained to hear it again. There, clearer this time, closer. Something or someone was out in that killing cold, crying out in pain. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me to ignore it, to stay inside where it was relatively safe. Omega survived by being invisible, by not drawing attention, by never taking risks. Going out in a blizzard for an unknown creature was the definition of foolish. I could die within minutes in that cold. I could get lost 20 feet from my own door. I could be walking into a trap rogues, sometimes use distress calls to lure victims, but I also knew what it felt like to cry out and have no one answer. I knew the specific despair of being alone in the cold, of being deemed not worth the effort of rescue. I knew what it meant to be abandoned. I couldn't do that to another living being. My coat hung by the door, heavy wool that I'd patched so many times it was more thread than original fabric. I pulled it on, my fingers clumsy, with cold and apprehension. My boots were in even worse condition, the leather cracked and separating from the soles, but they were all I had. I wrapped a scarf around my face until only my eyes showed, then pulled on mittens that offered more hope then warmth. Opening the door was like opening a portal to another world. The wind hit me with physical force, actually pushing me back a step. Snow stung my exposed skin like thrown needles. The cold was so intense it burned, searing my lungs with each gasping breath. For a moment, I couldn't see anything at all, just white chaos in every direction. I tied a rope around my waist and secured the other end to the door handle. It was a trick, old Samuel. One of the few pack members who'd shown me kindness had taught me my first winter. Never go out in a storm without a lifeline. He'd said, "The snow makes everywhere look the same. You can get lost between your cabin and your shed." He'd been right. I'd nearly died that first winter, doing exactly that. The whimpering came again, and I oriented toward it, shuffling forward through snow that was already knee-deep and rising. Each step was a battle. The wind tried to push me sideways, to spin me around, to steal my sense of direction. I kept one hand on the rope, the other stretched out before me, and moved inch by inch into the white void. Then I saw them. Two shapes in the snow at the very edge of my small clearing, right where the forest began. At first, they looked like dark boulders, but then one moved slightly, and I realized with a jolt of fear and wonder what they were. Wolves. Massive wolves. Black-furred and motionless, partially buried in snow that was already trying to claim them completely. My heart hammered so hard I could feel my pulse in my throat. These were not normal wolves, they were far too large. Even lying down, even wounded, I could tell they were enormous, which meant they were shifters, which meant they were likely alphas. Everything in my body told me to run. Injured predators were the most dangerous. Injured alphas were unpredictable, violent, deadly. And I was an omega, the easiest to hurt, the natural target for aggression. If they woke in a frenzy, they could kill me before they even realized what they were doing. But they were dying. I could see it in their stillness, in the blood that stained the snow around them, in the unnatural positions of their bodies. They had crawled here looking for shelter and found none. They had minutes, maybe, before the cold took them completely. I thought about the warmth of my cabin behind me. I thought about my fire, my bed, my safety. I thought about how easy it would be to just turn around and pretend I'd seen nothing. Then I thought about 4 years of being left in the cold myself. I moved forward. The first wolf was even more massive up close. His shoulder was matted with blood, frozen into dark crystals that glittered in the dim light. His breathing was so shallow, I had to put my face close to his muzzle to confirm he was alive. The warmth of his breath touched my frozen cheek like a ghost. "Hey," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Can you hear me?" One eye cracked open, just one. The other was swollen shut, probably from impact. But that single eye held me frozen in place. It was gold, pure molten gold, and it was entirely, disturbingly human. Intelligence looked out at me from that eye. Recognition, and something that might have been surprised that anyone had come at all. "I'm going to help you," I told him, though I had no idea how. "I promise I'm going to help you." The eye closed again, either in acceptance or resignation, or simply exhaustion. I turned to the second wolf, lying 3 feet away. He was equally huge, equally broken. Both his eyes were closed, but his sides moved with the barest hint of breath. Blood trail in the snow suggested they dragged themselves here from somewhere deeper in the forest. The logistics seemed impossible. Each wolf easily outweighed me by 100 pounds, probably more. They were dead weight, and the cabin was 30 feet away through knee-deep snow. I had no sled, no tools, nothing but my own strength and stubborn refusal to let them die. I took hold of the golden-eyed wolf's front legs and pulled. He didn't budge. I repositioned, bracing my feet, using my legs instead of my back, like I'd learned from years of hauling firewood. I pulled again, throwing all my weight into it. This time, he moved maybe 6 inches. Snow packed up in front of his body, making it even harder. I pulled again, and again, and again. Each time, I gained a few inches. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned with the cold air. Sweat froze on my skin beneath my layers. But I kept pulling. It took 27 minutes to drag him to the cabin door. I know because I counted every agonizing pull, trying to distract myself from the pain. 27 minutes of slipping, falling, getting back up, and pulling again. By the time I wrestled him over the threshold and onto the cabin floor, I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. But I couldn't stop. The second wolf was still out there, and the storm was getting worse. I went back out into the blizzard. The second wolf seemed heavier somehow, or perhaps I was just more exhausted. The wind had picked up even more, if that was possible, turning the snow horizontal. I could barely see my own hands in front of my face. Without the rope still tied around my waist, I would have been lost instantly. This time, it took 34 minutes. Twice I fell completely, once landing face first in the snow and thinking for a terrible moment that I couldn't get back up, that I'd die here 3 feet from my own door. But the thought of that wolf dying alone was worse than any physical pain, so I found my feet again and kept pulling. When I finally dragged him inside and kicked the door shut against the wind, I collapsed completely. I lay on the floor gasping, my whole body one massive cramp, unable to move for several long minutes. The warmth of the cabin felt like being burned after so much cold. Eventually, I forced myself to move. The wolves needed help more than I needed rest. I built up the fire until it roared, feeding it log after log that I couldn't afford to spare. I gathered every blanket I owned, all 3 of them, and draped them over the wolves, trying to trap what little body heat they still had. Their fur was thick but frozen solid in places, each hair a tiny icicle. I heated water on the stove and began the delicate work of cleaning their wounds. The golden-eyed wolf had a deep gash across his shoulder, clean-edged like a claw strike. The second wolf had what looked like bite marks on his flank and a badly bruised face. Both had numerous smaller cuts and scrapes. As I worked, I noticed other details. Their size was remarkable. Even for shifter wolves, they had to be alphas, probably high-ranking ones. Their fur was pristine black without any mottling, which was rare, and despite their injuries, they were powerfully built, all muscle and lethal grace. I cleaned the wounds as best I could with warm water and strips of cloth torn from my spare shirt. I applied pressure to the spot still bleeding slowly, holding firm until the blood clotted. I checked for broken bones as gently as I could, but they remained unconscious throughout, which was probably a mercy given how much it must hurt. When I'd done everything I could possibly do with my limited supplies and knowledge, I finally let myself collapse. I curled up on the floor between them and the stove, too exhausted to even make it to my bed. The last thing I saw before sleep claimed me was the steady rise and fall of black fur in the firelight, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years of isolation. I wasn't alone. For the first time since they'd exiled me to this cabin, there were other heartbeats in my world besides my own. Other breathing, other lives depending on mine. It should have terrified me. These were predators, alphas, dangerous in ways I couldn't even fully comprehend. Instead, I felt something that might have been peace. I woke to silence. Not the empty silence I'd grown accustomed to over 4 years of solitude, but a heavy, watchful silence. The kind that raises the hair on the back of your neck and floods your body with adrenaline before you even understand why. The storm had passed. Pale morning light filtered through the ice-covered windows, turning everything in the cabin silver and white. The fire had burned down to coals, and the temperature had dropped enough that I could see my breath again. But that wasn't what had woken me. The wolves were awake, and they were watching me. I became aware of this slowly, instinctively, the way prey animals sense predators. My eyes were still closed, but I could feel the weight of their attention, like physical pressure against my skin. Every muscle in my body locked with the primal urge to flee, to fight, to do something other than lie there motionless and vulnerable. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think rather than panic. I was alive, which meant they hadn't attacked while I slept. I was uninjured, which meant they weren't in a frenzy. They were watching, which meant they were conscious and aware enough to choose not to harm me. I opened my eyes. 2 sets of eyes stared back at me. The golden-eyed wolf was closer, maybe 4 feet away, his head raised despite the obvious pain it caused him. His gaze was intense, focused, weighing me with an intelligence that was purely human despite his animal form. The second wolf, whose eyes were a striking amber touched with green, watched from his position near the wall. Neither moved, Neither made a sound. "Good morning," I said softly, my voice rough from sleep and the dry air. "How are you feeling?" The golden-eyed wolf's ear twitched at my words, the only acknowledgement I received. His gaze never wavered, tracking my every tiny movement as I slowly sat up. I kept my movements deliberate and calm, the way you move around injured wild animals. "You must be thirsty," I continued, speaking as much to calm myself as them. "I'll get you some water." I stood slowly and moved to the bucket of clean water I kept by the door. The wolves' eyes followed me the entire way. I could feel their scrutiny like a touch, examining everything from my gait to my breathing. Being studied so intently by apex predators was terrifying on a visceral level my rational mind couldn't quite override. I filled 2 bowls, my only 2 bowls, which meant I'd be eating from the pot now, and carried them carefully toward the wolves. The golden-eyed one tensed as I approached, his muscles bunching beneath the blankets in a way that reminded me he could snap my neck before I even registered the movement. "It's just water," I said quietly, setting the first bowl down about 2 feet in front of him. "You've lost blood. You need to rehydrate." I placed the second bowl near the amber-eyed wolf, who watched with the same unnervingly human intelligence. Neither moved toward the water immediately, still watching me as I backed away to give them space. Finally, the golden-eyed wolf lowered his head to the bowl and began to drink. The movement seemed to cause him pain. His shoulder wound was clearly still bothering him, but he drank deeply, desperately. The sound of lapping was loud in the quiet cabin. As he drank, he made a sound low in his throat, not quite a growl, but a rumble of frustration that made me take an involuntary step back. He turned his golden eyes to me again, and I saw something in them that made me catch my breath. He wanted to shift. He wanted to speak, to explain, to thank me, perhaps. But he was too weak, too injured. The energy required for transformation was beyond him right now, and the frustration of being trapped in wolf form was clear in that very human gaze. "It's okay," I said, though I had no idea if that was true. "You need to rest. Your body needs time to heal before you try to shift." He held my gaze for a long moment, then seemed to accept this. The amber-eyed wolf had begun drinking as well, more slowly, with careful laps as if every movement hurt. The morning stretched into afternoon in a strange, tense quiet. I fed the fire, rationing my dwindling wood supply and trying not to think about what would happen when it ran out. I ate a meager breakfast of dried oats and the last of my preserved berries. I offered the wolves strips of dried meat from my stores, which they ate carefully from my hand, an act of trust from them that made my throat tight with emotion. Mostly, I sat and watched them, and they watched me back. 3 beings stranded together by circumstance and storm, none of us quite sure what came next. It was almost peaceful. Then the peace shattered like ice under a hammer. The sound of footsteps crunching through snow, multiple footsteps approaching from the direction of the main compound, then voices, low and commanding, then the sharp, authoritative knock at my door that made all 3 of us freeze. "Open this door." The voice was female, hard-edged, and left no room for debate. "We know you're in there. Open the door now, or we break it down." My heart dropped into my stomach. I recognized that voice, Ophe, one of the pack's most feared enforcers. She was known for her ruthlessness, her unwavering loyalty to Alpha Undis, and her particular disdain for Omegas she deemed weak, which meant all of us. The wolves had gone completely still, their bodies tense and ready despite their injuries. The golden-eyed one struggled to his feet, swaying slightly, positioning himself between me and the door in a protective stance that made no sense. Why would an alpha protect an omega? "I'm coming," I called out, my voice embarrassingly shaky. "Just a moment." I moved to the door, my legs feeling like water. The wolves watched me go, the golden-eyed one taking a limping step as if to follow before his legs nearly gave out. The amber-eyed wolf made a low sound in his throat, a warning or a question. I couldn't tell. I opened the door, and my small world exploded with the presence of the pack. The sight stole what little breath I had left. My small clearing, which normally saw no visitors beyond the occasional delivery, was completely surrounded. At least 20 wolves stood in a loose circle around my cabin, some in wolf form, others in human form, all of them radiating threat and authority. The snow had been trampled into paths crisscrossing the space, evidence of a thorough search pattern. They had come in force. They had come expecting trouble. At the forefront stood Ofe, a woman who embodied the word enforcer in every line of her body. Tall, powerfully built, with sharp features and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the practical clothes of a warrior, leather and wool designed for movement and warmth, and carried herself with the absolute confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. Behind her stood more enforcers, including faces I recognized from the few pack gatherings I'd been forced to attend before my exile. Noble, the beta's second, a massive man who could break bones with his bare hands. Cherry, a tracker known for her ruthless efficiency in hunting down rogues. Maureen, one of the senior pack members whose disdain for defective Omegas was legendary. "Step aside," Ofe said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. I had no choice. Omegas didn't refuse enforcer commands. I stepped back, and Ofe pushed past me into the cabin. The others followed, at least 6 of them crowding into my tiny space, making it feel even smaller, filling it with the overwhelming presence of dominance that made my knees weak and my head spin. My vision started to gray at the edges. Too many alphas, too much concentrated power in too small a space. This was exactly what destroyed me at pack gatherings, the suffocating weight of hierarchy pressing down until I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't function. I pressed my back against the wall and fought to stay conscious. Ofe's sharp gaze swept the cabin, taking in everything in seconds. The bloody water I'd used to clean wounds, the torn blankets, the dried meat wrappers, the 2 massive black wolves who were now on their feet despite their obvious pain, hackles raised, teeth bared in warning. The golden-eyed wolf was between me and the enforcers, growling low in his throat. His protective stance hadn't changed, even though he could barely stand. The amber-eyed wolf had positioned himself at an angle that let him watch both the door and his companion, his body coiled and ready despite the pain that had to be screaming through him. "Stand down," Noble commanded, his voice carrying the weight of pack authority that made even the other enforcers flinch slightly. The wolves didn't stand down. If anything, the golden-eyed one's growl deepened, a sound that resonated in my chest and made the enforcers reach for weapons I couldn't see but knew they carried. I said, "Stand down." Noble took a step forward, radiating enough dominance to make my vision darken further. "You're injured and outnumbered. Don't make this worse than it already is." Ofe held up a hand, stopping Noble's advance. Her eyes had narrowed, studying the wolves with an intensity that made me afraid of what she was seeing. She took a step closer, breathing in deeply, scenting the air. Then her entire demeanor changed. The aggressive stance melted into something that looked almost like shock. Her eyes widened slightly, the most emotion I'd ever seen from her. She took another breath, then another, as if confirming something she couldn't quite believe. "Call off the search," she said quietly to one of the enforcers behind her. "Send word to the Alpha immediately." "Ma'am?" Cherry asked, confusion clear in her voice. "Now," Ofe snapped, her command making everyone in the cabin jump. Cherry disappeared out the door at a run. Ofe turned back to the wolves, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a respect that shocked me more than anything else so far. "Can't you all smell it? That's River's line. Both of them." She paused, letting that sink in, then added the words that made my world tilt sideways. "That's the Alpha Sons. That's Undus and Noble." The name crashed over me like a physical wave. Not just any Alphas, not just high-ranking pack members. The Alpha's sons, the heirs to the entire Silvercrest pack. The 2 most powerful young wolves in our territory, possibly in our entire region, and I dragged them into my tiny, pathetic cabin and wrapped them in my threadbare blankets like they were stray dogs. I thought I might actually faint. Noble, the enforcer, not the wolf, was staring at the black wolves with recognition dawning on his face. "I'll be damned," he breathed. "They've been missing for 3 days. The Alpha's been tearing the forest apart looking for them." 3 days? I heard my own voice, distant and small. "They've been out here for 3 days? They were tracking that rogue pack that's been raiding our borders. Ofe explained, her eyes never leaving the wolves. Went out 2 nights ago and never came back. We found signs of a major fight about 5 miles north of here, blood everywhere, indications of at least 7 opponents. The trail went cold after that, until it led here, Maureen added, her voice dripping with suspicion as she finally spoke. To the Omega at the edge of territory. How convenient. The implication in her tone was clear that I had something to do with their injuries, that I'd somehow lured or trapped them. The absurdity of it would have been laughable if it weren't so dangerous. An Omega harming Alpha heirs was a killing offense. She helped us. The voice was rough, strained, barely human, but it was human. I spun around to see the golden-eyed wolf Undis, son of the Alpha, beginning to shift. The transformation was clearly agonizing. His body contorted, bones cracking and reforming, fur receding to reveal skin. He was pushing through it too fast, too soon. His injuries making the process exponentially more painful. But he didn't stop. Undis, no, the amber-eyed wolf noble. His brother tried to speak, but it came out as a whine. He couldn't shift yet, was still too weak. Undis collapsed to his hands and knees as the shift completed, gasping for breath. His human form was just as impressive as his wolf, powerfully built, broad-shouldered, with the kind of physique that came from a lifetime of training and dominance. Dark hair fell across his face, matted with sweat and blood. The wound on his shoulder looked even worse in human form, a ragged gash that definitely needed stitches. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Those golden eyes, now set in a human face, staring at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe for entirely different reasons than before. She saved us, Undis said, his voice gaining strength as he forced himself to sit up despite the obvious pain. We were dying in that storm. We made it here, to the edge of territory, and collapsed. We had nothing left. He turned those golden eyes to Ofe, then to the other enforcers. She came out into that storm, alone. She dragged us both inside by herself, cleaned our wounds, kept us warm. She's brave, braver than most warriors I know would have been. The silence that followed was deafening. Maureen's expression had twisted into something ugly. The Omega? The defective one? She... Careful, Undis interrupted, his voice dropping into a tone that made everyone in the cabin tense. Despite his injuries, despite being naked and barely able to sit upright, he radiated authority. That Omega, as you call her, saved my life and my brother's life when everyone else was searching in the wrong direction. Think very carefully about your next words. Maureen's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes promised this conversation wasn't over. Ofe was studying me now with an expression I couldn't interpret. The Alpha is coming, she said. He'll want to see this for himself. Then he'll see it, Undis replied, and he'll understand exactly what kind of courage was required to save us. He hadn't taken his eyes off me. What's your name? I'd been asked my name countless times in my life, but never like this. Never with such intensity, such focus, as if my answer mattered more than anything else in the world. My mouth was dry, my tongue thick and clumsy. Derek, I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. My name is Derek. Derek, Undis repeated, and the way he said it soft, almost reverent, made something flutter in my chest that I didn't dare examine too closely. Thank you, Derek, for not leaving us to die, for being braver than you had any reason to be. Before I could respond, before I could process any of what was happening, the sound of approaching footsteps multiplied outside. Not just a few people now, but many. And beneath the footsteps, a presence so overwhelming it preceded its owner like a shockwave. Ofe straightened immediately. He's here. The door opened, and Alpha Undis, father of the wounded heirs, leader of the Silvercrest Pack, one of the most powerful shifters in the region, entered my tiny cabin, and my world changed forever. The sight stole what little breath I had left. My small clearing, which normally saw no visitors beyond the occasional delivery, was completely surrounded. At least 20 wolves stood in a loose circle around my cabin, some in wolf form, others in human form, all of them radiating threat and authority. The snow had been trampled into paths crisscrossing the space, evidence of a thorough search pattern. They had come in force. They had come expecting trouble. At the forefront stood Ofe, a woman who embodied the word enforcer in every line of her body. Tall, powerfully built, with sharp features and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the practical clothes of a warrior, leather and wool designed for movement and warmth, and carried herself with the absolute confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. Behind her stood more enforcers, including faces I recognized from the few pack gatherings I'd been forced to attend before my exile. Noble, the Beta's second, a massive man who could break bones with his bare hands. Cherry, a tracker known for her ruthless efficiency in hunting down rogues. Maureen, one of the senior pack members whose disdain for defective Omegas was legendary. "Step aside," Ofe said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. I had no choice. Omegas didn't refuse enforcer commands. I stepped back, and Ofe pushed past me into the cabin. The others followed, at least 6 of them crowding into my tiny space, making it feel even smaller, filling it with the overwhelming presence of dominance that made my knees weak and my head spin. My vision started to gray at the edges. Too many alphas, too much concentrated power in too small a space. This was exactly what destroyed me at pack gatherings, the suffocating weight of hierarchy pressing down until I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't function. I pressed my back against the wall and fought to stay conscious. Ofe's sharp gaze swept the cabin, taking in everything in seconds. The bloody water I'd used to clean wounds, the torn blankets, the dried meat wrappers, the 2 massive black wolves who were now on their feet despite their obvious pain, hackles raised, teeth bared in warning. The golden-eyed wolf was between me and the enforcers, growling low in his throat. His protective stance hadn't changed, even though he could barely stand. The amber-eyed wolf had positioned himself at an angle that let him watch both the door and his companion, his body coiled and ready despite the pain that had to be screaming through him. "Stand down," Noble commanded, his voice carrying the weight of pack authority that made even the other enforcers flinch slightly. The wolves didn't stand down. If anything, the golden-eyed one's growl deepened, a sound that resonated in my chest and made the enforcers reach for weapons I couldn't see but knew they carried. I said, "Stand down." Noble took a step forward, radiating enough dominance to make my vision darken further. "You're injured and outnumbered. Don't make this worse than it already is." Ofe held up a hand, stopping Noble's advance. Her eyes had narrowed, studying the wolves with an intensity that made me afraid of what she was seeing. She took a step closer, breathing in deeply, scenting the air. Then her entire demeanor changed. The aggressive stance melted into something that looked almost like shock. Her eyes widened slightly, the most emotion I'd ever seen from her. She took another breath, then another, as if confirming something she couldn't quite believe. "Call off the search," she said quietly to one of the enforcers behind her. "Send word to the Alpha immediately." "Ma'am?" Cherry asked, confusion clear in her voice. "Now," Ofe snapped, her command making everyone in the cabin jump. Cherry disappeared out the door at a run. Ofe turned back to the wolves, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a respect that shocked me more than anything else so far. "Can't you all smell it? That's River's line. Both of them." She paused, letting that sink in, then added the words that made my world tilt sideways. "That's the Alpha Sons. That's Undus and Noble." The name crashed over me like a physical wave. Not just any Alphas, not just high-ranking pack members. The Alpha's sons, the heirs to the entire Silvercrest pack. The 2 most powerful young wolves in our territory, possibly in our entire region, and I dragged them into my tiny, pathetic cabin and wrapped them in my threadbare blankets like they were stray dogs. I thought I might actually faint. Noble, the enforcer, not the wolf, was staring at the black wolves with recognition dawning on his face. "I'll be damned," he breathed. "They've been missing for 3 days. The Alpha's been tearing the forest apart looking for them." 3 days? I heard my own voice, distant and small. "They've been out here for 3 days? They were tracking that rogue pack that's been raiding our borders," Ofe explained, her eyes never leaving the wolves. "Went out 2 nights ago and never came back. We found signs of a major fight about 5 miles north of here, blood everywhere, indications of at least 7 opponents. The trail went cold after that. Until it led here, Maureen added, her voice dripping with suspicion as she finally spoke. To the Omega at the edge of territory. How convenient. The implication in her tone was clear that I had something to do with their injuries, that I'd somehow lured or trapped them. The absurdity of it would have been laughable if it weren't so dangerous. An Omega harming Alpha heirs was a killing offense. She helped us. The voice was rough, strained, barely human, but it was human. I spun around to see the golden-eyed wolf Undis, son of the Alpha, beginning to shift. The transformation was clearly agonizing. His body contorted, bones cracking and reforming, fur receding to reveal skin. He was pushing through it too fast, too soon. His injuries making the process exponentially more painful. But he didn't stop. Undis, no, the amber-eyed wolf noble. His brother tried to speak, but it came out as a whine. He couldn't shift yet, was still too weak. Undis collapsed to his hands and knees as the shift completed, gasping for breath. His human form was just as impressive as his wolf, powerfully built, broad-shouldered, with the kind of physique that came from a lifetime of training and dominance. Dark hair fell across his face, matted with sweat and blood. The wound on his shoulder looked even worse in human form, a ragged gash that definitely needed stitches. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Those golden eyes, now set in a human face, staring at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe for entirely different reasons than before. She saved us, Undis said, his voice gaining strength as he forced himself to sit up despite the obvious pain. We were dying in that storm. We made it here, to the edge of territory, and collapsed. We had nothing left. He turned those golden eyes to Ofe, then to the other enforcers. She came out into that storm, alone. She dragged us both inside by herself, cleaned our wounds, kept us warm. She's brave, braver than most warriors I know would have been. The silence that followed was deafening. Maureen's expression had twisted into something ugly. The Omega? The defective one? She... Careful, Undis interrupted, his voice dropping into a tone that made everyone in the cabin tense. Despite his injuries, despite being naked and barely able to sit upright, he radiated authority. That Omega, as you call her, saved my life and my brother's life when everyone else was searching in the wrong direction. Think very carefully about your next words. Maureen's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes promised this conversation wasn't over. Ofe was studying me now with an expression I couldn't interpret. The Alpha is coming, she said. He'll want to see this for himself. Then he'll see it, Undis replied, and he'll understand exactly what kind of courage was required to save us. He hadn't taken his eyes off me. What's your name? I'd been asked my name countless times in my life, but never like this. Never with such intensity, such focus, as if my answer mattered more than anything else in the world. My mouth was dry, my tongue thick and clumsy. Derek, I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. My name is Derek. Derek, Undis repeated, and the way he said it soft, almost reverent, made something flutter in my chest that I didn't dare examine too closely. Thank you, Derek, for not leaving us to die, for being braver than you had any reason to be. Before I could respond, before I could process any of what was happening, the sound of approaching footsteps multiplied outside. Not just a few people now, but many. And beneath the footsteps, a presence so overwhelming it preceded its owner like a shockwave. Ofe straightened immediately. He's here. The door opened, and Alpha Undis, father of the wounded heirs, leader of the Silvercrest Pack, one of the most powerful shifters in the region, entered my tiny cabin, and my world changed forever. The walk to the main compound took 45 minutes through snow-covered forest. Under normal circumstances, it might have taken an hour, but the pack had already cleared a path when they'd come searching for the Alpha's sons. I'd made this walk only twice before, once when they brought me out to the cabin, and once for a mandatory pack gathering I'd barely survived. Both times, I'd been too overwhelmed by circumstances to notice the beauty of the forest, the ancient pines reaching toward gray skies, the way sunlight filtered through branches to paint the snow in shades of gold and blue. Now, walking between the Alpha and Ofe, with Cherry behind me, I saw everything with crystal clarity. This was pack territory, protected and maintained for generations. The trees grew straight and strong. The paths, though snow-covered now, were well maintained. Even in winter, there was a sense of life here, bird calls, the distant sound of the river, the tracks of deer and smaller animals. The Alpha walked in silence, which I was grateful for. Ofe occasionally spoke into a radio, coordinating with the advance party that had transported Undis and Noble. Cherry hummed something under her breath, a tune I didn't recognize. As we walked, I noticed pack members at various points along the path sentries I realized posted to watch for rogues or other threats. Each one straightened as the Alpha passed, showing respect without needing to be told. Some glanced at me curiously. None showed the open hostility I'd grown accustomed to. Alpha, I finally worked up the courage to say, I need to ask the rogues that attacked your sons. Are they still out there? Dead, the Alpha replied without breaking stride. We found their bodies about 3 miles from where we found you. Undus and Noble killed all 7 of them before their wounds forced them to retreat. It was the blood loss and the storm that nearly finished what the rogues couldn't. 7 rogues. The Alpha's sons had fought and killed 7 adult wolves. The scope of their power, their lethality, made me shiver. They're the finest warriors I've ever trained, the Alpha continued, pride evident in his voice. Strong, fast, strategic, but they're also reckless. They should have called for backup before engaging. He glanced at me. If you hadn't found them when you did, their recklessness would have cost them everything. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The forest began to thin, and then suddenly we emerged into a clearing that made me stop in my tracks. The main compound was massive. Where I had expected a few buildings, there was instead an entire small village. The main pack house dominated the center, a huge lodge-style structure of timber and stone that could probably house 50 wolves comfortably. Around it spread smaller buildings, individual residences for mated pairs and families, communal dining halls, training grounds, a medical facility, workshops, storage buildings. Everything was connected by cleared paths and surrounded by a subtle but clear perimeter of security. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys, lights glowed in windows, the sounds of life drifted across the snow voices, laughter, the ring of metal from what might have been a forge. It was civilization, pack civilization, and it was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Welcome to Silvercrest, the Alpha said. My knees started to shake, and it wasn't from the cold. All those wolves, all that concentrated energy, all that hierarchy and dominance pressed into one space. How was I supposed to survive this? Breathe, Ofe said quietly beside me. Your quarters are on the far east side, isolated. You won't have to be in the thick of it. I tried to take comfort from that. I failed. We walked through the compound, and pack members stopped to stare. And Omega, being escorted by the Alpha himself, was clearly unusual enough to draw attention. I kept my eyes down, focusing on the path ahead, trying not to feel the weight of dozens of gazes. The east wing was part of the main pack house, but separated by a corridor and multiple doors. The Alpha led me to a heavy wooden door at the very end of the wing. Your quarters, he said, opening the door. I stepped inside and nearly wept. The rooms, plural, were bigger than my entire cabin. A sitting area with a couch and chairs around a proper fireplace. A separate bedroom with a real bed, not just boards and a thin mattress. A bathroom with running water and an actual shower. A small kitchen area with a stove, refrigerator, and cabinets. Windows with heavy curtains that could block out light and sound. Thick walls that muffled the noise from the rest of the compound. It was luxury beyond anything I had experienced in 4 years. Beyond anything I had expected to experience again in my lifetime. The door locks from the inside, the Alpha explained. No one can enter without your permission. You control who comes into your space. Meals can be brought to you if you prefer not to go to the communal dining hall. There's a private entrance. He pointed to a second door I hadn't noticed that leads directly outside, so you don't have to walk through the common areas if you don't want to. I turned to face him, and to my horror, felt tears sliding down my cheeks. Alpha, I don't. This is too much. I don't deserve. You saved my sons, he interrupted firmly. You gave up your safety, your warmth, your supplies to save 2 wolves Who could have killed you? You've lived in poverty and isolation for 4 years, and you still had enough compassion to risk your life for strangers. His gray eyes held mine. This isn't charity, Derek. This is gratitude, and it's long overdue. Cherry set my canvas bag down on the couch. It looked ridiculously small in the spacious room, everything I owned fitting into one pathetic bundle. Thank you, I managed to say. Thank you, Alpha. He nodded. Rest. Recover. Dr. Westmore will come by this evening to check on you. You've been living in barely above freezing temperatures for months, and I want to make sure you haven't done any lasting damage to yourself. He moved toward the door, then paused. Derek, you're not in exile anymore. You're not forgotten or dismissed. You're part of this pack, and you'll be treated as such. If anyone gives you trouble, you report it to Ofe immediately. Understood? Yes, Alpha. He left, Ofe and Cherry following. The door closed with a solid click, and suddenly I was alone in my new space, in my new life, with no idea what came next. I stood in the center of the sitting room for a long time, just breathing, just trying to believe this was real. Then, slowly, I began to explore my new home. The bedroom was warm, heated by vents connected to some central system. The bed was enormous, with thick blankets and actual pillows. I pressed my hand into the mattress and nearly sobbed at how soft it was. The bathroom had hot water, not lukewarm, not heated on a stove, but actually hot water that came out of the tap at the turn of a handle. I stood in the shower for 20 minutes, letting the heat soak into bones that had been cold for 4 straight years, watching the grime and soot and accumulated exhaustion swirl down the drain. The kitchen was stocked. Someone had anticipated my arrival and filled the refrigerator with fresh food, meat, vegetables, milk, eggs, real food, not just dried rations and forage scraps. The cabinets held pots and pans, dishes, everything I might need. I made myself tea, actual tea, not the weak herbal mixture I'd been surviving on, and sat on the couch with the cup cradled in my hands. This was my life now. This warmth, this safety, this abundance. The Alpha had given it to me because I'd done one decent thing, because I'd chosen compassion over fear. Part of me still couldn't believe it was real. Part of me kept waiting for someone to burst in and tell me it was all a mistake, that I belonged back in the cabin at the edge of nowhere. But the tea was real. The warmth was real. The soft couch beneath me was real. Maybe, just maybe, this was real too. I finished my tea, and then, for the first time in 4 years, I lay down in a proper bed and fell asleep, without shivering, without fear, without the constant awareness of cold seeping through thin walls. I slept like I was dead, and I dreamed of golden eyes and safety. I woke to knocking, gentle, patient, repeated. For a confused moment, I didn't remember where I was. The bed was too soft, the room too warm, the silence too complete. Then memory flooded back. The storm, the wolves, the Alpha, my new quarters. I'd fallen asleep in the middle of the day and apparently slept straight through to evening. The knocking came again. Derek? It's Dr. Westmore. The Alpha sent me to check on you. I stumbled out of bed, still groggy, and opened the door. Doctor? Westmore stood in the hallway with his medical bag, looking exactly as he had that morning, practical, efficient, and vaguely disapproving of everyone and everything. May I come in? He asked. Of course. I stepped aside, suddenly self-conscious about my rumpled appearance. The doctor entered and set his bag on the small dining table. How are you feeling? I'm fine, I said automatically. He gave me a look that suggested I was an idiot. You've been living in barely survivable conditions for 4 years. You went out into a blizzard without proper gear. You performed extreme physical labor while hypothermic, and you've been operating on a starvation diet for months. You're not fine. Now, sit down and let me actually assess your condition. I sat. The examination was thorough and uncomfortable. He checked my weight. I was 30 pounds underweight. He examined my hands and feet for frostbite damage, minor tissue damage on 3 toes and 2 fingers, but nothing permanent if treated properly. He listened to my lungs, some scarring from repeated respiratory infections, but nothing critical. He checked my vitamin levels through a blood sample deficient in basically everything. You're malnourished, chronically stressed, and you've been fighting off hypothermia for months," he said bluntly. "Your body has been in survival mode for so long it's forgotten what thriving looks like. But the good news is that none of the damage is permanent. With proper nutrition, warmth, and rest, you should recover fully within a few months." "Months?" I repeated weakly. "Your body has been eating itself to stay alive. It takes time to rebuild." He pulled out several bottles of supplements. "Take these daily. Eat regularly 3 full meals, plus snacks if you're hungry. Force yourself if you have to. Your appetite will normalize eventually. Get sunlight when you can. And rest. Your body needs time to heal." "Yes, sir." He studied me for a long moment. "The Alpha told me what you did, saving his sons. That took courage. It was just they needed help. Most people wouldn't have gone out in that storm. Most people wouldn't have risked their own safety for unknown wolves." He packed his equipment away. "I'm glad you're here instead of in that terrible cabin. This is where you should have been all along." "Dr. Westmore, why was I exiled in the first place? I know I'm sensitive to dominance, but surely that's not enough to—" "Politics," he interrupted with clear distaste. "The previous Beta Noble's father, who died 3 years ago, convinced the Alpha that you were a liability, that your sensitivity made you weak, and weakness had no place in the pack. He pushed for your exile, and the Alpha, grieving his mate who just passed and dealing with rogue threats, agreed." The doctor's expression softened slightly. "It was a mistake. One the Alpha has regretted, I think, though he'd never admit it out loud. Your return gives him a chance to correct that mistake. So I had been exiled because one bigoted Beta wanted me gone, and the Alpha had been too distracted by grief to fight for me. The knowledge sat heavy in my chest, but it also explained a lot. Anyway, Doctor," Westmore said, moving toward the door, "I'll be checking on you weekly until you're back to healthy weight and your vitamin levels stabilize. Don't hesitate to call me if you need anything." "Doctor," I called as he reached the door, "how are Undus and Noble, the Alpha's sons?" His expression softened into something that might have been approval. "Undus has 23 stitches in his shoulder and strict orders not to shift for a week. Noble is still too weak to shift, but is recovering well. Both of them have been asking about you." My heart did something complicated in my chest. "They have?" Repeatedly. "Noble especially. He's frustrated he can't shift yet to thank you properly. Undus has been persistent about knowing you're being cared for." The doctor smiled slightly. "I suspect you'll have visitors soon, once I clear them for movement." He left, and I was alone again, with my thoughts in a strange flutter of anticipation that I didn't know what to do with. The Alpha's sons had been asking about me. I spent the rest of the evening organizing my meager possessions in my new space, which took all of 15 minutes, and then attempting to cook a proper meal. The act of preparing food in a real kitchen with fresh ingredients was strange and wonderful. I made scrambled eggs and toast, simple things that tasted like luxury after years of dried rations. As I ate, I found myself thinking about golden eyes and the way Undus had told me to breathe when I'd been overwhelmed. The way he'd called me brave. The way both brothers had positioned themselves between me and potential threats despite being barely able to stand. It didn't make sense. Alphas didn't protect Omegas they didn't know. They especially didn't protect Omegas who were considered defective and worthless. Yet both Undus and Noble had done exactly that, instinctively, without hesitation. Why? I was still pondering this when there was another knock at my door, different from Dr. Westmore's patient knock. This was sharper, more authoritative. I opened the door to find Ofe standing in the hallway. "May I come in?" she asked, her tone making it clear it wasn't really a question. "Of course." I stepped aside, nervous about having the fierce enforcer in my space. Ofe entered and looked around, nodding approval at the accommodations. "Good, you're settling in." She turned to face me, and her expression was serious. "I need to talk to you about your position in the pack." My stomach dropped. Here it came, the other shoe dropping. The revelation that this was all temporary, or conditional, or dependent on me proving myself in some impossible way. "Your status has changed," Ofe continued. "You're no longer an exiled Omega living on pack charity. You saved the Alpha's heirs, which means you have status now, whether you want it or not. People will talk. Some will be curious, some will be envious, and some, her expression darkened, will resent you for it. I didn't do it for status, I said quickly. I just wanted to help them. I know, that's obvious to anyone with eyes, but it doesn't matter what your intentions were. What matters is how people perceive the situation. She crossed her arms. Maureen has been spreading rumors that you somehow orchestrated the whole thing, that you lured the Alpha Sons to your cabin deliberately, maybe in cooperation with the rogues. It's nonsense, obviously, but some people are listening. Anger sparked in my chest, rare for me, but sharp. That's insane. How would I'm an Omega living alone in a cabin. I have no power, no resources, no... I know, Ofe interrupted, and most of the pack knows it too. But Maureen has influence among the older, more traditional pack members who think Omegas should be seen and not heard, who think sensitivity equals weakness. She's making trouble. What should I do? Ignore it for now. Let your actions speak for themselves. The Alpha knows the truth. His sons know the truth. That's what matters. She paused. But be aware that not everyone is going to welcome you here with open arms. Be careful who you trust. I understand. Ofe's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I think what you did was incredibly brave. I've been an enforcer for 15 years, and I'm not sure I would have gone out in that storm for anyone. You have courage that has nothing to do with physical strength, and that's valuable. She moved toward the door. If anyone gives you serious trouble, you come to me directly. That's an order from the Alpha, and I'll enforce it. Thank you, Ofe. She nodded and left, and I was alone again with even more to think about. Maureen was spreading rumors. Some pack members resented me. My status had changed in ways I didn't understand and hadn't asked for. All I'd wanted was to save 2 dying wolves. Why did everything have to be so complicated? I went to bed that night with my mind spinning, trying to process everything that had happened in a single day. This morning I'd been an exiled Omega in a freezing cabin. Tonight I was in comfortable quarters in the main compound with enemies I didn't know I had and a status I didn't understand. Change was supposed to be good, so why did it feel so terrifying? 3 days passed in a strange sort of limbo. I stayed in my quarters mostly, venturing out only to use the private entrance for short walks in the forest. The solitude was familiar and comfortable, even as part of me recognized I was hiding. Doctor. Westmore visited daily, monitoring my recovery and adjusting my supplement regimen. Meals were delivered to my door 3 times a day by different pack members. I didn't know always hot, always generous portions, always more than I could eat. I was gaining weight already, filling out in places that had been concave for years. The constant warmth was doing wonders for my chronic aches and pains. My frostbite damage was healing under Doctor. Westmore's treatments. Physically, I was recovering faster than I dared hope. Emotionally, I was a mess. Every unexpected sound made me jump. Every footstep in the hallway outside my door made my heart race. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to tell me this was all a mistake, for the Alpha to change his mind and send me back to the cabin. On the morning of the 4th day, there was a knock at my door that was somehow different from all the others. Gentler but more insistent. Familiar somehow, though I couldn't place why. I opened the door to find Undus standing in the hallway. He looked better than he had in my cabin, clean, dressed in comfortable clothes, his dark hair freshly washed and falling across his forehead. But his shoulder was still bandaged heavily, and he moved carefully, obviously still in pain. Those golden eyes fixed on me with the same intensity I remembered, and my breath caught. Derek, he said, and my name sounded different in his voice. Important somehow. May I come in? Yes, of course. I stepped aside, suddenly hyper-aware of my own appearance. I was wearing the new clothes that had appeared in my closet, comfortable pack-issue clothing that actually fit, but I felt shabby next to his natural authority. Undus entered and looked around the space with obvious approval. Good quarters. Private, secure, comfortable. Father did well. They're amazing, I said honestly, more than I ever expected. He turned to face me, and the intensity of his gaze made me want to look away. I didn't. Something about this moment felt important, like looking away would be giving up something I couldn't afford to lose. I owe you my life, Undus said simply. Noble and I both do. You saved us when we were out of options, out of time, out of hope. You risked yourself for strangers, and there's no way to repay that kind of debt. You don't owe me anything, I said quickly. I did what anyone would have done. That's where you're wrong. He took a step closer, his golden eyes never leaving mine. Most people wouldn't have gone out in that storm. Most people wouldn't have dragged 200-pound wolves through the snow. Most people would have been too afraid of what might happen when we woke up. He paused. You weren't most people. I didn't know what to say to that. The compliment sat warm in my chest, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. How's your shoulder? I asked, deflecting. Healing. Dr. Westmore says I was lucky the claws missed anything vital. Another inch to the right and I would have bled out before you found us. He rotated the shoulder slightly and winced. I'm on strict orders not to shift for another week, which is driving me insane. But I'm alive, which is what matters. And Noble? Frustrated. He finally shifted yesterday, but he's still weak. The doctor won't let him do anything except rest and eat, which is torture for someone as active as my brother. Undus smiled slightly. He wants to visit you, but Father won't allow it until he's stronger. Noble's convinced you'll think he's ungrateful. The idea that someone as powerful as an alpha heir would care what I thought was absurd. I don't think that. I told him you wouldn't, but Noble worries. Undus moved to the window, looking out at the compound. He's different from me, more emotional, more connected to people. I'm better at strategy and distance. Together, we balance each other out. It's why Father trained us to rule together eventually. Rule together? I repeated. You mean both of you? Twin alphas. It's rare, but not unheard of. Noble has the empathy and connection to people. I have the tactical mind and decisiveness. Separately, we're strong. Together, we're unstoppable. He glanced back at me. At least, that's the theory. The rogue attack proved we still have a lot to learn. You killed 7 rogues, I pointed out. That's not exactly a failure. We barely survived, and we would have died if you hadn't found us. That's a failure in my book. His jaw tightened. We got overconfident, thought we could handle anything, almost paid the ultimate price for that arrogance. I didn't know what to say to that admission of vulnerability from someone so powerful. It made him seem more human, more real. Derek, Unda said, turning to face me fully, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My heart started racing. Okay. Are you comfortable here? Really comfortable? Because if you're not, if there's anything you need, anything at all, you tell me. After what you did for us, ensuring your comfort and safety is the least we can do. The concern in his voice was genuine, and it made my throat tight. I'm comfortable. More comfortable than I've been in years. The quarters are amazing. The food is good, Doctor. Westmore is taking care of me. I'm fine. But, he prompted, clearly hearing something in my voice. I hesitated, then decided honesty was better than pretense. But I'm also terrified. I don't understand my place here. I don't know how to navigate pack politics. I've heard there are rumors about me, suggestions that I somehow orchestrated what happened, and I'm worried that at any moment someone's gonna realize I don't belong here and send me back. Undus's expression darkened. The rumors are garbage spread by people with too much time and not enough sense. Father is handling it. As for your place, he took a step closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You earned your place here, not through politics or manipulation, but through courage and compassion. That matters more than any amount of bloodline or rank. I'm just an Omega, I said quietly, a defective one at that. You're the Omega who saved the Alpha heirs when they were dying in the snow. That's who you are now. His hand came up, and for a moment I thought he might touch my face. Instead, he lowered it. And there's nothing defective about you, Derek. You're sensitive. Yes. But sensitivity isn't weakness. It means you feel things more deeply, experience the world more intensely. That's a gift, not a flaw. I wanted to believe him. The way he said it, with such certainty and conviction, made it almost possible. Thank you, I managed to say, for saying that, for everything. Undus smiled a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. I should be thanking you every day for the rest of my life, probably. He moved toward the door, then paused. Would you like to have dinner with Noble and me tonight in our quarters? Just the three of us, nothing formal. We'd like to get to know you better, if you're comfortable with that. Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to stay in my safe, comfortable space and not risk the overwhelming presence of two alpha heirs in close quarters. But another part of me, a part that was tired of hiding, tired of fear, wanted to say yes. I'd like that, I heard myself say. Undus's smile widened. Good. I'll send someone to escort you at 7. Dress comfortably is truly informal. He left, and I stood in the middle of my sitting room, wondering what I'd just agreed to and why my heart was racing with something that felt suspiciously like anticipation. At precisely 7 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. I'd spent the previous 2 hours alternating between excitement and panic, changing clothes 3 times before settling on simple dark pants and a soft gray sweater that were comfortable but presentable. I opened the door to find Cherry standing in the hallway, looking far less intimidating than she had during the rescue operation. She actually smiled at me. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be, I admitted. She led me through corridors I hadn't explored yet, deeper into the main pack house. We passed communal areas where pack members gathered, and several people stopped to stare as we walked by. I kept my eyes forward and tried to ignore the attention. Cherry stopped at a heavy wooden door near the center of the building. The Alpha Heirs' quarters, she explained. Private, but not isolated like yours. They prefer being in the thick of things. She knocked twice. The door opened, and Noble stood there, and I finally got to see him in human form. He was slightly less broad than Undus, but taller, with the same dark hair and powerful build. His eyes were that striking amber green I remembered from his wolf form, warm and expressive in a way that Undus's golden gaze wasn't. His face was healing but still bruised, and he moved stiffly, clearly still in pain. But his smile was genuine and bright. Derek, he said, his voice rich and warm. Finally, come in, please. Cherry nodded to me and left, leaving me standing in the doorway feeling suddenly shy. Don't just stand there, Undus called from somewhere inside. Come in and close the door before you let all the heat out. I stepped inside, and Noble closed the door behind me. The Alpha Heirs' quarters were significantly larger than mine, a full apartment with multiple rooms. The sitting area I entered was comfortable and lived in, with mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, books scattered on surfaces, and a general sense of organized chaos. It felt like a home, not just a living space. Undus emerged from what looked like a kitchen area, wearing casual clothes and an apron that seemed absurdly domestic on someone so intimidating. I'm making steak. Hope you eat meat. I do, I said, still taking everything in. Your place is wonderful. It's chaos, Noble said cheerfully, gesturing for me to sit on the couch. Undus is organized. I'm not. We've learned to coexist. He sat across from me in a chair, moving carefully. I've been wanting to meet you properly since I shifted, to thank you for what you did. You don't need to thank me, I said automatically. Yes, I do. Noble leaned forward, his amber green eyes intense. You saved my life when you had every reason not to, when it would have been easier, safer, smarter to just stay inside. That deserves more than thanks, but thanks is where I'll start. The sincerity in his voice made my chest tight. I'm just glad you're both okay. Thanks to you. Noble settled back in his chair. Undus has told me about the rumors Maureen's spreading. I want you to know they're being dealt with. Father had a very pointed conversation with her yesterday. What kind of conversation? I asked nervously. The kind where he reminded her that spreading false accusations about someone under his protection was grounds for expulsion from the pack. Undus called from the kitchen. She won't be causing you problems anymore. Under his protection. The words settled over me like a blanket, warm and confusing in equal measure. So, Noble said, clearly wanting to change the subject to something lighter, tell us about yourself. 4 years in that cabin, what did you do all day? How did you stay sane? It was a good question. How had I stayed sane? I read, I said, a lot. I only had 3 books, but I read them over and over. I foraged in the warmer months, berries, nuts, wild vegetables. I learned to preserve food for winter. I chopped wood, maintained the cabin, tried to keep busy. I paused, remembering. Mostly, I tried not to think too much. Thinking made it harder. "That sounds incredibly lonely," Noble said softly. It was. I met his eyes, but it was also safe. No one demanding things of me, no dominance crushing me until I couldn't breathe, no judgment or disappointment, just silence and survival. "Do you miss it?" Undus asked, emerging with 3 plates balanced expertly. "The isolation?" I thought about that as he set the plates down, perfectly cooked steaks, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread that smelled like heaven. "Sometimes, when things here get overwhelming. But mostly, no. I don't miss the cold or the hunger or the constant fear that this would be the winter I didn't survive." We ate, and the conversation flowed more easily than I had expected. The brothers asked about my life before exile, and I told them about growing up in a pack that never quite knew what to do with an Omega who couldn't handle standard hierarchy. They told me about training to be alpha heirs, about the pressure and expectations, about what it was like to know your entire life's path before you'd even chosen it. "Do you ever resent it?" I asked Undus. "Having your future decided for you?" He considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but mostly, I'm honored. Leading the pack, protecting our people, that's purpose. That matters. The weight of it can be heavy, but I'd rather carry weight that matters than live without purpose." Spoken like a true alpha, Noble teased. "I'm more conflicted about it. I love our pack, love our people, but sometimes I wonder what life would be like if I could just be Noble, not Noble the alpha heir. If I could make mistakes without them affecting hundreds of people." "You're allowed to make mistakes," Undus said. "That's how we learn. Tell that to the 7 rogues we nearly died fighting," Noble shot back. But there was humor in his tone. They bickered like that throughout the meal, comfortable and familiar with each other in a way that spoke of a lifetime of closeness. I found myself relaxing despite the concentrated alpha energy in the room. Maybe it was because they kept it carefully controlled around me. Maybe it was because their attention felt protective rather than dominating. Or maybe I was just getting used to being around powerful wolves again. After dinner, Noble cleared the plates while Undus made tea. I sat on the couch, feeling more content than I had in years. "Derek," Noble said as he returned, sitting next to me with careful distance, "I need to ask you something, and you can absolutely say no." My stomach clenched. "Okay. Would you be willing to help train our pack's Omegas? Teach them survival skills, foraging, preservation techniques, all the things you learn living independently?" He held up a hand before I could respond. "I know it's asking a lot. I know being around multiple Omegas might be overwhelming in its own way. But you have skills none of them have, knowledge that could be valuable, and it might help you feel more connected to the pack." I stared at him, surprised. "You want me to teach?" "If you're willing," Undus added, bringing over mugs of tea. "No pressure. But Noble's right, you survived 4 years alone through skills and resourcefulness. That's worth sharing." The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Teaching meant interaction, exposure, risk, but it also meant purpose, contribution, value beyond just being the Omega who got lucky and saved the alpha heirs. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course," Noble said immediately. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready." We talked for another hour about lighter things, books we'd read, places in the territory worth visiting, the upcoming winter solstice celebration. By the time I left, escorted back to my quarters by Cherry, my face hurt from smiling. I'd had dinner with the alpha heirs. I'd laughed, talked, been treated like an equal rather than a defective Omega. They'd offered me purpose and trusted me with it. Maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe I belonged here. A week after dinner with the alpha heirs, I made my decision. I would teach the Omegas. The decision came after days of internal debate, wrestling with fear and hope in equal measure. What finally tipped the scales was a simple realization. I'd spent 4 years surviving alone, and that survival had taught me things that could help others. If I could share that knowledge, give even one Omega tools they might need someday, then my exile wouldn't have been entirely wasted. I told Dr. Westmore first, during one of his checkups. "Good," he said with his usual bluntness. You need purpose, and they need what you can teach them. It's practical." He paused, then added more gently, "And it will be good for you to be around others. Isolation was necessary for your survival out there, but it's not healthy long-term. Wolves are pack animals, even the sensitive ones." I told Undis and Noble next, knocking nervously on their door one evening. Both their faces lit up when I told them. "That's excellent," Undis said, his golden eyes warm with approval. "When do you want to start?" "Soon, I think, before I lose my nerve." "You won't lose your nerve," Noble assured me. "But we'll set it up quickly anyway. Small groups, voluntary attendance, no pressure on anyone, including you." 3 days later, I found myself in a small classroom in one of the pack's educational buildings, facing 5 curious Omegas who'd signed up for my first session. I recognized none of them, but they all recognized me. The Omega who saved the Alpha heirs. The one who'd been exiled and then returned. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and hope. "Hi," I started, my voice embarrassingly shaky. "I'm Derek. I lived alone on the edge of territory for 4 years and I learned things, survival things. I want to share them with you if you're interested." A young Omega with red hair raised her hand. "Why were you exiled?" Direct and to the point. I appreciated that. "I'm hypersensitive to dominance," I said honestly. "Being around too many alphas, too much concentrated hierarchy, overwhelms me to the point of collapse. The previous beta convinced the Alpha 1 was a liability, so I was given a cabin at the edge of territory and essentially forgotten." "That's horrible," another Omega said softly, a male with gentle brown eyes. "It was," I agreed. "But it also taught me how to survive when no one else is coming to help. And that's what I want to teach you." Over the next 2 hours, I taught them the basics of foraging which winter plants were edible, how to find food when stores ran out, how to preserve berries and nuts for long-term storage. I taught them about fire management, about rationing supplies, about the psychological tricks I'd use to stay sane through isolation. They asked questions, good questions, smart questions, and slowly, I stopped being nervous and started actually enjoying the teaching. When the session ended, the red-haired Omega, her name was Sage, approached me hesitantly. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest about why you were exiled, and for teaching us this. I don't think anyone's ever treated us like we might need to know how to survive independently. Everyone should know how to survive," I said. "Hoping you never need the skills is fine, but having them just in case, that's wisdom." She smiled and left, and I stood alone in the classroom feeling something unfamiliar pride, not in what I'd survived, but in what I'd just shared. The teaching became a regular thing. Twice a week, small groups of Omegas would come to learn survival skills, foraging, preservation techniques, basic medical care, fire management. Word spread, and soon I had a waiting list. But more than that, I started making connections. Sage became a regular visitor to my quarters, bringing tea and conversation. Marcus, the gentle brown-eyed Omega, started joining me on my morning walks, sharing pack gossip and stories. Others would stop me in the corridors to ask questions or share their own survival tips. For the first time since my exile, I had something resembling friends. The changes in my life continued to multiply. Dr. Westmore declared me fully recovered nutritionally, though he insisted I continue the supplements through winter. The Alpha invited me to small pack gatherings, carefully controlled events with limited attendance so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. Ofe started including me in training sessions specifically designed for non-combat pack members, teaching us basic self-defense and emergency protocols. And through it all, Undis and Noble remained constant presences. Undis would stop by my quarters several times a week, ostensibly to check on me, but really just to talk. He told me about pack politics, about challenges they were facing with neighboring territories, about his plans for when he and Noble eventually took over leadership. His visits were intense but comfortable, filled with serious conversation and mutual respect. Noble was different. His visits were lighter, more spontaneous. He'd show up with books he thought I'd like, or to drag me out to see something beautiful in the forest, or just to sit quietly and keep me company when the weight of adjustment became too much. His presence was soothing in a way I couldn't quite explain, like warm sunlight after a long winter, 6 weeks after returning to the main compound, I realized something that both thrilled and terrified me. I was happy. Not just surviving, not just getting by, actually, genuinely happy. I had purpose through teaching. I had friendships developing. I had comfortable living space and enough food and warmth that had once seemed impossible. I had the respect of the Alpha and his sons, protection from those who might wish me harm, and slowly growing confidence that I belonged here. But happiness, I'd learned, was fragile. And in a pack, peace never lasted forever. The trouble started during a full pack gathering, the first large-scale event I'd attended since returning to the compound. The winter solstice was approaching, and tradition demanded the entire pack gather for the announcement of the season's hunting parties, territory patrols, and other essential business. I'd tried to excuse myself, but the Alpha had personally requested my attendance. "You're part of this pack now," he'd said firmly. "That means being present for important gatherings. I'll ensure you're positioned where the dominance won't overwhelm you, but you need to be there." So I went. The main hall was massive, capable of holding the pack's 300 members comfortably. I was positioned near the back and to the side, as far from the concentrated Alpha energy at the front as possible. Sage and Marcus flanked me, offering silent support. The Alpha stood at the front with Undus and Noble on either side, the very picture of pack hierarchy and power. He spoke about the successful year, about challenges overcome, about the strength of Silvercrest. His voice carried authority that made every wolf in the room stand straighter. Then he mentioned the rogue attack. 6 weeks ago, my sons were ambushed by 7 rogues while defending our borders. They fought valiantly and eliminated the threat, but were gravely wounded in the process. The Alpha's gaze swept the room. They survived because one of our own showed extraordinary courage and compassion. Derek, he looked directly at me, and suddenly every eye in the room was on me, saved their lives when they were dying in a storm. He risked his own safety without hesitation, dragged them to shelter despite their combined weight, and cared for them until help arrived. The attention was crushing. 300 wolves staring at me, their combined energy pressing down like a physical weight. My vision started to gray. "Breathe," Sage whispered urgently. "Focus on breathing." I did, fighting the overwhelming urge to collapse or run or both. Because of his actions, the Alpha continued, "I'm formally recognizing Derek's service to the pack. He will be awarded the Guardian's Mark, a rare honor given to those who preserve the life of pack leadership at great personal risk." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Guardian's Mark was legendary, given perhaps once a generation. It came with privileges, status, and most importantly, formal protection under pack law. No one could harm a Guardian Mark bearer without answering directly to the Alpha. I hadn't known this was coming. From the surprised looks on Undus and Noble's faces, neither had they. "Derek, come forward," the Alpha commanded. My legs didn't want to work. Marcus gave me a gentle push, and somehow I found myself walking through the crowd toward the front. Every step felt like moving through water, the concentrated dominance, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. But I kept moving. When I reached the front, the Alpha placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that would have destroyed me 6 weeks ago. Now, it was merely uncomfortable, his dominance carefully controlled to not overwhelm me completely. "Kneel," he said gently. I did. The Alpha drew a knife from his belt, the blade gleaming in the firelight. Pack markings were done in ink traditionally, but the Guardian's Mark was different. It was cut into the skin and treated to scar permanently, a visible reminder of the deed that earned it. "This will hurt," the Alpha warned. "Do you accept the Guardian's Mark and all it entails?" "I accept," I managed to say. The knife cut into my left forearm, 3 clean lines forming a symbol I'd only seen in old pack histories, a circle representing the pack, a shield representing protection, and a star representing the preserved life. The Alpha worked quickly and precisely, and the pain was sharp but bearable. When it was done, he wrapped my arm in clean cloth and helped me to my feet. "Derek bears the Guardian's Mark," the Alpha announced to the assembled pack. "He is under my direct protection. Any who harm him, physically or otherwise, answer to me personally." The pack acknowledged with a unified "Yes, Alpha" that resonated through the hall. I was dismissed and returned to my spot on shaking legs, my arm throbbing, but my heart soaring. The Guardian's mark, formal recognition and protection. I was no longer just an Omega who got lucky. I was a recognized, valued member of the pack. But not everyone was pleased. As the gathering dispersed, I noticed Maureen watching me with undisguised hostility. She wasn't alone. A cluster of older pack members around her shared her sour expression. They'd been silenced by the Alpha's direct order to stop spreading rumors, but clearly their opinions hadn't changed. "Ignore them," Sage said, noticing my attention. "They're bitter because the world is changing, and they don't like it. Your mark proves you deserve to be here. That's what matters." I wanted to believe her, but the looks from Maureen's group suggested this was far from over. That night, someone vandalized my door. The words were crude but effective, painted in red that looked disturbingly like blood. "Guardian of nothing, and exile trash doesn't belong." I stood in the hallway, staring at the words, feeling my happiness crack like thin ice. "Derek?" Undus's voice came from behind me. He and Noble appeared around the corner, clearly on their way to visit, and stopped dead at the sight of the vandalism. The temperature seemed to drop as both brothers stared at my door. The air grew thick with dominance not directed at me, but radiating out like a warning to anyone who might be watching. "Who did this?" Noble asked, his voice deadly calm. "I don't know," I said quietly. "I just found it." Undus pulled out his phone and made a call. "Ofe, we have a situation at Derek's quarters. Vandalism. Yes, now." He hung up and turned to me. "Pack your essentials. You're staying with us tonight." "I can't." "You can, and you will," Noble interrupted, his amber green eyes flashing with anger not directed at me. "Someone violated your space, threatened you with this filth. You're not staying here until we've identified and dealt with them." "This is exactly why Father gave you the Guardian's mark," Undus added. "To make clear that harming you means facing consequences. Whoever did this will learn that lesson personally." Ofe arrived within minutes, took photos of the vandalism, and arranged for it to be cleaned immediately. She also posted guards at both ends of my hallway, which seemed like overkill until she explained that threats against Guardian mark bearers were treated as threats against pack leadership itself. I packed a bag and followed Undus and Noble to their quarters, feeling like a burden and a cause of trouble despite their insistence otherwise. Their guest room was comfortable and clearly prepared in advance, as if they'd anticipated this possibility. "Stay as long as you need," Noble said, his earlier anger fading into concern. "We mean it. You're safe here." That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed in the Alpha Heirs' quarters, I heard raised voices through the walls. The brothers were arguing with multiple someones, based on the different voices. I caught fragments. Unacceptable. Find out who. Make an example. Eventually, silence fell, and I drifted into uneasy sleep. The next morning, I learned that Maureen and 3 other pack members had been exiled for the vandalism. The pack's security system had cameras, and they'd been caught. The Alpha had given them a choice: accept exile or face formal challenge from his sons. All 4 chose exile, leaving Silvercrest territory by noon. "It's harsh," Undus told me over breakfast, "but necessary. If we let threats against you go unpunished, others would think it's acceptable. The Guardian's mark means something, and we protect those who bear it." 4 people exiled because of me, I said, feeling sick. 4 people exiled because of their own choices, Noble corrected firmly. "They chose to target you. They chose to vandalize your space. They chose to ignore pack law and common decency. The consequences are on them." Logically, I knew he was right. Emotionally, I felt like I'd torn the pack apart. "Derek," Undus said, reaching across the table to grip my hand, "you are not responsible for others' bigotry and hatred. You are not responsible for enforcing pack law. You are not responsible for making people accept change. You're responsible for being yourself, for contributing what you can, and for accepting the protection you've earned." That's it. I wanted to believe him, but guilt was a heavy weight to carry. I ended up staying with Undus and Noble for 2 weeks. Initially, it was supposed to be just a few days until the situation settled. But settled kept getting delayed as the pack dealt with the fallout from the exiles. Maureen's departure had created a power vacuum in the senior Omega advisor position, and there was debate about who should fill it. Some traditionalists were pushing for someone who shared Maureen's views. Progressive pack members wanted someone more accepting of change. The Alpha, with input from his sons, appointed Sage. She was young for the position, barely 25, but she was respected among the Omegas and had shown leadership during my teaching sessions. Her appointment was controversial but strategic, a clear signal that the pack was moving forward, not backward. During those 2 weeks living with the Alpha heirs, something shifted between us. It started small, shared meals becoming discussions that stretched for hours. Undus explaining pack politics, while I offered perspectives he'd never considered. Noble teaching me chess and being genuinely pleased when I started winning. The three of us falling into comfortable rhythms of coexistence. Who used the bathroom when, whose turn it was to cook, the unspoken understanding of when someone needed space versus company. But it was more than just comfortable cohabitation. There were moments that felt charged with something undefined. Like when I fell asleep on their couch during a movie and woke up covered with a blanket, Noble reading nearby with protective vigilance. Or when Undus came back from a patrol injured and let me clean the wound without complaint, his golden eyes following my every movement with an intensity that made my hands shake. Or when Noble found me having a panic attack after a particularly brutal nightmare about my exile and held me until I could breathe again, his presence anchoring me to reality. Small moments that added up to something significant, something I was afraid to examine too closely. "You know you can stay here permanently if you want," Noble said one evening while we were preparing dinner. Undus was still at a pack council meeting, and we were alone in the kitchen. "I can't do that," I said automatically. "You need your space. I've been here too long already." "We don't need space from you," Noble corrected, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. "We like having you here. The place feels more alive with you in it." I didn't know what to say to that. The implication made my heart race in ways I didn't want to analyze. "Derek," Noble set down his knife and turned to face me. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Okay," I said nervously. "Do you feel it? This," he gestured between us. "Connection? Or is it just me being hopeful?" My mouth went dry. What do you mean?" "I mean that having you here feels right in a way nothing else has. I mean that I think about you constantly. I mean that when you're hurting, I hurt. When you're happy, I'm happy." He took a step closer. "I mean that I think you might be my mate, Derek. Mine and Undus's both." The word mate hung in the air between us, impossible and terrifying, and desperately hoped for all at once. "That's not possible," I whispered. "Omegas don't have two mates. And I'm nobody. You're perfect." Undus's voice came from the doorway. Neither of us had heard him come in. He moved into the kitchen, his golden eyes intense on my face. "Twin alphas can share a mate. It's rare, but it happens. And Noble's right, you feel like ours. Like you've always been ours. And we just didn't know it until we nearly died and you saved us." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "I'm defective," I said desperately. "I can't handle normal pack hierarchy. I collapse under too much dominance. You're sensitive," Undus interrupted, "which means we have to be careful with you, protective of you. And that's fine because protecting you feels right. Natural." He moved closer, flanking me while Noble stood on my other side. "We would never overwhelm you deliberately, Derek. Never hurt you or push you past what you can handle. You'd be cherished, not crushed." "Why me?" I asked, tears threatening. "Of all the Omegas in the pack, all the ones who are strong and capable and—" "Because you're brave," Noble said softly. "Because you're kind. Because you risked everything for strangers. Because being around you feels like coming home. Because you're ours," Undus added simply. "We knew it the moment we woke up in your cabin and saw you'd saved us despite every reason not to. Our wolves knew it before our human minds caught up." I stood between them, overwhelmed and terrified, and desperately wanting to believe this was real. I don't know how to be anyone's mate. I admitted, I don't know how to navigate that kind of relationship. I've been alone for so long, I've forgotten how to be with people. "Then we'll learn together," Noble said. "No pressure, no rush. Just give us a chance? Give yourself a chance to be happy? I looked between them, Noble's warm amber green eyes full of hope, Undus's golden gaze burning with quiet intensity. Two alpha heirs who could have anyone who wanted me. Broken, sensitive, exiled me. It felt like a dream, but their presence felt real. Their care over the past weeks had been real. The way they looked at me like I mattered, like I was precious, that felt real too. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we can try. Noble's face broke into the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. Undus's expression softened into something tender that made my heart ache. Thank you, Undus said quietly, for trusting us. We won't waste that trust. Noble pulled me into a gentle hug, careful not to overwhelm me with too much contact too fast. Undus joined from the other side, and I found myself sandwiched between two massive alpha heirs who were holding me like I was something precious and breakable. For the first time in my life, being held didn't feel suffocating. It felt safe. The next morning, I woke up in the guest room to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, I lay there processing everything that had happened the night before. The confession, the acceptance, the terrifying, wonderful possibility that I might have not one but two mates who actually wanted me. It felt too good to be true. Part of me waited for reality to crash down, for them to realize they'd made a mistake, for this fragile happiness to shatter. But when I emerged from the bedroom, both Undus and Noble looked at me with the same warmth they had the night before. Nothing had changed except that now the affection was acknowledged. Morning, Noble said cheerfully, setting a plate of food in front of the empty chair between them. How'd you sleep? Good, I said, which was only partially true. I'd slept fitfully, mind racing with possibilities and fears. We need to talk about how this works, Undus said once I'd sat down. He was always direct, always practical. Specifically, about pack perception and what we're comfortable making public versus keeping private. I haven't told anyone yet, Noble added quickly. Neither has Undus. This is your choice too, how fast we move, who knows what, all of it. I appreciated that more than I could express. I think, slow? I'm still adjusting to being back in the pack. Adding mating the alpha heirs to that feels overwhelming. Slow is good, Undus agreed. We can keep this between us for now. Let you get comfortable with the idea before dealing with pack politics. Because there would be politics. Omega's mating alpha heirs was unusual enough. A defective Omega mating twin alpha heirs? That would be explosive. What about your father? I asked nervously. The alpha needs to approve matings involving his heirs, doesn't he? Undus and Noble exchanged glances. He already knows, Noble admitted. He figured it out before we did, actually. Told us 3 days ago that we were being obvious, and we should probably do something about it. And he's okay with it? I could barely believe it. He's pleased, Undus said. Exact words were that Omega has more courage than most of my warriors. He'd make a fine addition to leadership. So yes, you have Father's blessing. The relief was overwhelming. I'd been so afraid of disapproval, of being told I wasn't good enough for the alpha heirs. There's something else you should know, Noble said carefully. The Guardian's mark you received? That technically makes you eligible for Pack Council. Father's been considering appointing you as Omega representative to replace Maureen. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? No. I can't. That's way too much. You could, Undus interrupted. You have insights from living on the margins that no one else on the council has. You understand survival in ways that could inform policy, and you've already proven you can teach effectively. But I don't know anything about pack politics or governance or... Neither did any of us when we started, Noble pointed out. That's why there's training, mentorship, time to learn. Father's not expecting you to take the position tomorrow, but he wanted us to plant the seed, let you consider it. The idea was terrifying and intriguing in equal measure. Me, on the Pack Council, having a voice in decisions that affected hundreds of wolves. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had surviving 4 years alone. So had saving the alpha heirs. So had being chosen as their mate. Maybe impossible was just another word for hasn't happened yet. I'll think about it, I said carefully. That's all I can promise. That's all we're asking, Undis assured me. The conversation moved to lighter topics, plans for the day, the upcoming winter solstice celebration, Noble's ongoing chess tournament with various pack members. But underneath it all, I felt the change between us. The acknowledgement of something deeper than friendship, something that could grow into forever if we let it. That afternoon, Sage came to visit. I'd returned to my own quarters finally, after 2 weeks with the Alpha Heirs. The door had been repaired and repainted, the guards removed now that the threat was dealt with. But coming back felt strange, like the space was too empty after the lived-in warmth of Undis and Noble's place. You look different, Sage said immediately, studying me with those sharp green eyes. Happy. What happened? I'd never been good at hiding emotions. There might be something happening. Between me and I couldn't finish the sentence. Her eyes widened. The Alpha Heirs? Both of them? How did you... Derek, you spent 2 weeks living with them, and you came back glowing. It's not exactly subtle. She grinned. This is wonderful. Do you have any idea what this means for Omega status in the pack? Please don't make this political, I begged. Everything's political when you're involved with future pack leadership, she said pragmatically. But that aside, are you happy? Do they treat you well? They're wonderful, I admitted. Careful with me, respectful, actually listening when I talk. They make me feel valued. Good, because if they didn't, Guardian's mark or not, I'd find a way to kick their asses. She said it lightly, but I knew she meant it. Sage was fierce in her protection of those she cared about. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, pack gossip, teaching plans, her new position as senior Omega advisor. It felt normal and good, like maybe I really was building a life here. That evening, Undus came to my quarters with a book. Thought you might like this, he said, handing it over. It was a history of pack bonds and mating traditions, well worn and obviously from his personal collection. Thank you, I said, touched by the gesture. I'm not good at grand romantic gestures, Undus admitted, standing in my doorway, looking almost uncomfortable. Noble's better at that, the flowers, the poetry, the sweeping declarations. I'm more practical, but I wanted you to have something that mattered to me, so you'd know this matters. I looked at the book, then at him, and felt my chest tighten with emotion. It matters to me too, all of it. You don't need grand gestures, Undus. This is perfect. Something in his expression softened. Can I come in? Just to sit with you? Nothing more, just company. Please. We spent the evening on my couch, me reading the book he'd given me while he worked on Pack Council documents. We barely talked, but the silence was comfortable, companionable. Just being in the same space felt right, in a way I couldn't articulate. When he left, he paused at the door. Derek, I'm glad Noble said something last night. I wanted to, but I was afraid I'd overwhelm you if I pushed too fast. You didn't overwhelm me, I said softly. Either of you. You've been perfect. He smiled rare and precious and left. I went to bed that night feeling more settled than I had since returning to the compound. The future was still uncertain, still terrifying in many ways. But for the first time, I was looking forward to it rather than dreading it.